That was all fake. It was a fake desert, it was fake snow, fake trees, fake truck, kangaroo was fake. It was all just generated by AI. It's getting pretty good, I've got to say. We're not that far off the bloody Matrix. But the reason I put it in there was there's so much fake stuff online about which lights you should get, how powerful these lights are, people claiming that the lights are going to be 20,000 lumens. You've got no way of knowing. All you can do is buy them and put them on your truck and then see if they're any good. By that time it's too late. So I just wanted to give you my experience over the last 20 years or so of buying all sorts of different lights, what I've found and why I've chosen the lights that I've got in here now. Here's some real footage of these lights in action. Annoyingly, the AI generated footage looks better than my footage of the real lights, but that's the world we live in now. When you're shopping for lights, they all make claims of so many lumens, so many watts. How do you actually know if that's what they actually do? Unless you've got expensive light meters and gauges and equipment, you can't tell. So how do you decide what the right light is for you? I've kind of figured out what I like, and that might be what's good for you, might not be. I'm not trying to push anything. I'll start off with a little story. When I was about 18, a long time ago, I had a mate who had emigrated to Australia. When he came back, he was planning on buying a car, but he never got around to buying one. So he had brought these light bulbs back from Australia, which he was going to put in his car, and he gave them to me. And these were 120 watt halogens compared to the 60 watt halogens that I had in my old Mark I Fiesta. So I thought, oh, brilliant, I'll stick them in. So I put them in, switched them on, and the fuse blew instantly. So being young and dumb, I just put a bigger fuse in. And one night when I was driving home, the lights just cut out, complete darkness. Managed to come to a stop without hitting anything. And I started playing around with the lights, trying to get them to work. And I realized that if I pulled the lever towards me, as if I was going to flash somebody, the lights would stay on. So I drove the rest of the way home, holding the lever towards me. And it was only when I got back and opened the door and the interior light came on, and I noticed that the switch had melted and there was molten plastic trickling down the side of the steering column. I was lucky it never landed on my leg. I was lucky the car never went on fire. That's the first lesson when it comes to lights and other electrical accessories. Do it properly. Don't just put a bigger fuse in and hope it'll be all right. You need to fit a relay. Choose lights that come with a proper wiring loom and a relay, because a lot of the cheap ones you just get the light. Then you've got to go out and find the right relay, find the right gauge of wire and all the rest of it. The good ones come with everything pre-wired. All you've got to do is connect it up. Makes a big difference. So after that incident, a few years later, I had my first Land Rover Defender, and I actually crashed that because the lights were so dim. There were like a couple of candles in there. If you want to know how I crashed it, check out the link below, the full story's on there. I decided I've got to get some proper lights. So the first lights I bought were these, which are, it's got the 3 prongs. This is just a direct replacement for the original halogen bulbs, but it's LED. And I thought these were great when I first plugged them in. They were a bit brighter than the old halogens that I had, but as soon as I turned the radio on, there was so much static interference. I mean, you couldn't hear anything. It was just like constant noise. And that's something you need to know about LEDs, especially the cheap ones. They produce a lot of electronic interference, which if you've got a good quality light, they build in systems which reduce the interference to next to zero, and it doesn't affect any other systems on your vehicle. But the cheap ones, you run the risk that you can't listen to the radio. It could interfere with two-way radios, all sorts of interference. So these turned out to be a waste of money. Next up, I got some of these. Now, these are a little bit more money, but still on the pretty cheap. And they worked okay, but after a year, there were a pair. One of them just broke, couldn't get it going again. There was no warranty. You don't get warranties with stuff that you buy off eBay. And so I think this one maybe still works, but yeah, it was never that good. So after that, I went to sort of mid-range lights. I got a light bar from Wilderness Lighting, which was actually pretty good. Mounted it on the bull bar. Yeah, worked really well. Had it for years and years, never let me down. It was a really good piece of kit. Then when I sold the last Defender, I left the light on it. So when I got the Grenadier, I had to choose something else. I'll show you what I chose in a minute, and I'll tell you why I chose it. How do you tell if a light is cheap or well made? Well, you can look at the overall build quality of it. If you look inside the reflectors and look at the actual LED chips themselves, they should be all uniform in size, and they should be perfectly positioned in the center of the reflector. What you'll see, I'll show you that one in a minute. What you see on that one is that they're all at different orientations. They're not centrally positioned, so they're not going to reflect the light evenly, which means you might get dark spots and light spots. You might get light spraying out way out to the side when you want it going straight ahead. That's one thing you can look at. Another thing to look at is the hardware that comes with it. How good's the wiring loom, if it's got one at all? And do the brackets that it comes with, are they stainless steel? Even if the brackets are stainless steel, what about the screws or bolts that come with it? Are they stainless steel? Because if they're not, they'll rust up pretty quick, and then the whole thing looks a bit shabby. The cheap ones tend to have a mild steel bracket with just painted, which again isn't going to last that long. It's going to look pretty shabby pretty quick. So that's another indicator of whether it's a quality bit of kit or not. There was a really cool Ronny Dahl video years ago where he had an auto electrician in, and they actually tested a whole load of different lights from cheap to expensive to see what the claimed wattage of the light was in comparison to the actual wattage. And some of the cheap ones were like 30% of what they claimed to be. And you've got no way of checking unless you've got that bit of equipment. It's the same thing, some of them will claim to have 40,000 lumens or 100,000 lumens, whatever it is, but you've got no way of telling until you've already bought it and put it on your truck and then realized, oh, actually, it's not that great. The Wilderness light bar that I had was pretty good. That one threw the light a long way. It was a very white light, which in retrospect is probably not as good as something with a lower color temperature. Color temperature is basically the whiteness of the light. So sunlight, it's getting pretty late now, but sunlight is about 5,000 Kelvin. That's a good temperature to have on driving lights, I think. If you go lower in the Kelvin scale down to sort of 3,000, it's quite a yellow light, which can be good for things like snow, lots of dust. Yellow light, you get less glare coming back from stuff floating about in the atmosphere. If you go up the other end of the scale, you go up to 7,000 Kelvin, it's almost blue, and they do penetrate a long way. So at first glance you think, oh, these are great, which is a bit like the Wilderness lights that I used to have. But if you've got mist or rain, you get so much glare coming back that actually you lose your distance vision, because the things in the near distance like fog, raindrops, etc., they shine so much light back at you that you can't actually see through it. And so yeah, I reckon around about the 4,500, 5,000 Kelvin is about the perfect for me here in this country. The other thing that you want to look at is the color rendering index, which is kind of related to the color temperature. Color rendering index is a measure of how accurately colors represent to the human eye under that light. So you can imagine if the light was pure blue, everything's going to look pretty blue. Like under normal sunlight at midday, you've got a color rendering index of 100, and all lights are rated on that scale. Anything above 80 is going to be pretty good. If it's down sort of 60, 70, you start to get abnormalities where you can't pick out individual colors. It might not be a problem for some people, but for me, the main reason I want additional driving lights is for looking out for animals. There's hundreds of deer around here which tend to jump out on the roads at night, and all these animals are designed to be camouflaged. They don't want to be seen, so they blend into the environment. And if you've got a good light that renders good color, it helps you to pick out the different skin tones and stuff. So if they do jump out or they are lurking on the side of the road, you've got a chance of seeing them before they make a go for it. Another thing that you need to look at when you're choosing lights is the reflectors themselves. In the old days when you had halogen lights or HID lights, you had one bulb, and so the reflector would surround the bulb and the reflector would dictate the beam pattern of the light. You could have a narrow reflector for a 10-degree pencil beam, really good for long distance, but you couldn't see much at the edge. Or you could have a kind of flood type pattern where it was wider and it would spread the light a long way either side, but you wouldn't get quite so much distance. Now that we've got LEDs, each individual LED chip has its own reflector. So you can get a combination of spot reflectors, flood reflectors, all in the one light. That's a good thing for sure, because it means you only need to buy one light that can do everything. But you need to look carefully at how those reflectors are designed. One of the things you find with the cheaper lights is that they throw the light too wide, and each reflector is circular. So that means that it throws out a cone of light. So once you get out to a certain distance, a lot of that light is going way up into the sky, and some of it is going right down onto the road directly in front of you. Now, you don't want too much light on the road in front of you, because if it gets too bright, you actually get glare coming back, which diminishes your distance vision. If you've got too much light in the foreground, you can't actually see as far up ahead. So the best type of lights have reflectors which reflect an oval light pattern. So you get a little bit of height, a little bit of depth, but a lot more horizontal spread. Because at the end of the day, our eyes are horizontally positioned. You don't have one here and one here. So you don't need that. My vision is about here, but my peripheral vision, yeah, I can see them. You've got much wider vision that way than you have this way. So you want lights that project an oval spread, not a complete circle. That's one of the things about these lights that I really like. What I found with the light bars that I'd had in the past, they were pretty good distance, good spread, but you are wasting a lot of those lumens up into the sky and also down onto the road directly in front of you, where the stock lights can light up that part of the road. If you go for a full-on spot beam, then you're going to have additional lighting to give you that light at the edge. If you get the right light with an oval spread pattern, you only need one set of lights. You don't need to have multiple sets. You don't need extra light bars. I know it's not what people want to hear, because people want to cover their trucks with lights, but you just don't need it all. If you get the right set, that's all you need. So these are the lights that I've actually got, as you can see, made by Laser here in the UK, pretty rare thing these days. What you'll notice is that on these lights, the chips, those little yellow dots, actually point upwards and downwards, and the reflectors then reflect the light out. This gives them complete control over where the light's going. None of the light is going directly out of the chip out onto the road. All of it is coming off the reflector and then out. So by shaping the reflectors, you can see that the reflector down at the bottom is shaped differently to the other two there. You don't get hot spots and cold spots. That's basically what you're paying for when you're buying high-end lights like these. You're actually getting a lot of effort's been put into the design rather than just the brightness of the LED itself. These ones also have position lights. You can choose whether you want them amber or white. I guess it doesn't really matter. I just thought the amber ones kind of look better. They're pretty good. I've seen a lot of a rat. I've seen a lot of wildlife on this journey. Ducks, toads, a rat, deer, several deer. Hundreds of rabbits. Another rat. What I like about these lights is the way that they spread so wide across the road, which you can kind of see, but you still get decent distance, and there's enough height in the spread that on an undulating road like this you still get to see up the hill in front of you and down the hill if you're coming over the brow. It's pretty tight, this bit. The other thing you can notice is you can see all the different shades of green, the blue-green of the pine trees, the purple flowers of the heather on the left there. It really picks out all the colours quite nicely, which makes it easier to see animals like these baby oyster catchers. Ducks again. That's the Grenadier lights, pretty good. And that's the Sentinels. Just give it a little bit more distance and a lot more spread at the edge of the road, which is where you want it. It's a very even light too. There's not too many hot spots. Another head.